I don't like drama. I don't like when things start escalating. I like it's time for me to go. Now I'm speaking up more. Now I'm putting my foot down more. So the relationships where people were like, taking advantage of the fact that I was so passive, they started falling apart. You get to a point where the veil gets lifted off of your eyes. You get to a point where you stop making excuses for people. And you also get to a point where you have to realize that any friend that feels offended by you wanting more for yourself is not a friend worth keeping. It's from an understanding that if God can pursue me, chase me down, do all of these things to mold me, I must be important. I must be special. I must be worth protecting, right? So when you are violating my boundaries, I have no problem speaking up because now I understand that I am worth protecting. I am worth respecting. You don't have to agree, but you can disagree out of my face. You can disagree over there because I'm not tolerating that nonsense. If I say that I don't want to be in certain environments because I feel like it's detrimental to me in some way, shape, or form, or I just don't want to be around certain things, then I'm not going to be in the environment. If that is the only environment that we can facilitate in this friendship, then we don't need to have this friendship. I don't think I'm perfect. I don't think I'm perfect. But if I'm simply just improving my life and becoming more confident while I grow in my relationship with God, and that leaves a sour taste in some people's mouth, then you can choke respectfully. That's a personal problem because I am not going back on it because you feel uncomfortable. So after feeling like I was, playing it safe, playing it small for so long and settling in a career that I did not really enjoy, I decided to take the bold leap of faith and leave my job and build a life that I actually wanted. But things did not go as planned. God actually pulled me aside and said, Miss Girl, we have some things we need to discuss. Okay. And after, going through a wilderness season where God literally unraveled me and the Holy Spirit read me for filth and really revealed all the things that was in my heart, all the things that I needed to work on, I am finally able to share the lessons that I have learned now that, I'm basically coming out of it. So if you find yourself in a season where you feel like you're not living the life that you actually want to live, you really feel like you need to start over and do the things that you really want to do, if you find yourself running away from the things God is calling you to do, if you find yourself playing it safe and you're curious as to what the process is like when you decide to go after the things that you really want, then this series is for you. And if you are new here, then hello and welcome to the show. I'm your host, Sensi, and on this podcast, we talk about taking accountability for your life to become the best version of yourself. So without further ado, let us get into today's episode. So let's talk about how my relationships changed or were affected in the wilderness season. So as I started getting closer to God, I felt like he really started changing my appetite in that I would be in certain environments prior to this and I would be fine. Like I said, I was in the world. I wasn't that much in the world, okay? But I was in the world and I was living my life not in certain ways, but in some ways, but not in certain ways. And I felt like he changed my appetite for certain things. And when I would find myself in certain environments that I knew he did not want me to be in, or doing certain things that I knew he did not approve of, the conviction started setting in and I started feeling very off in those environments. That's like in the early stages of when I was really starting to get serious about my relationship with God, in a sense where I wasn't going to live for me and have me in the driver's seat, but I felt a pull to go deeper with him. The Holy Spirit started convicting me in rooms that I knew he would not want me in. Because prior to that, when I was in control, when I was in the driver's seat, I was doing whatever I wanted to do. And I could, right? But there were certain things that God wanted me to give up. There were certain things that he did not approve of, and he decided to start letting it affect me. And what that looks like was when I was in certain rooms, certain environments, it's almost as if I would dissociate and one moment I would be in the moment talking to my friends, talking to people, etc. And there would be a point in time where I just go into my head and I would be like, what am I doing here? I'm not supposed to be here. Why am I here? And then I started not being able to enjoy these moments because now I didn't feel comfortable. Now the convictions were hitting, they were getting stronger. And it's like, if you're going to be somewhere and not even enjoy it, then you stop wanting to go, right? And you stop wanting to do certain things. An example in my life that really started changing the nature of my relationships, or really started affecting my relationships, was with drinking, for example. Now, I wasn't a heavy drinker, right? I have never been somebody who like really drinks heavy. Also, for context, I feel like this is important. I grew up in the Caribbean, right? And drinking back home is like it's like breathing sometimes, okay? Especially at the fêtes. Fêtes means party in patois and French. So when I say fête, I mean like any type of event or party or something like that. Growing up in the Caribbean, alcohol is like very normalized, and some people are alcoholics. Some people are alcoholics, but drinking is very normal. Drinking is very like, and any fete, any like family event or whatever, like there will be alcohol and people will be drinking. People won't necessarily be like blacked out drunk at every event, but people will be drinking, right? We drink socially for sure, okay? And so I remember being very unfazed by alcohol because it was around me all my life. And I think that's really the difference. By the time I got to America, I did 1 year in high school and then I had freshman year. And the way I saw like American teenagers acting in college freshman year towards alcohol and drinking, I could not relate to that because drinking and alcohol was never something that I had to fight for or sneak around to be around. That was like a part of our society. So when people were acting like crazy trying to drink or trying to like get fake IDs and do all of these things, I didn't see the hype because I grew up around alcohol, so it was never that serious for me. But let's use drinking for an example. I just had to give you that context. I would say in my early 20s, like post graduation and stuff, I I would definitely be somebody who would have the occasional cocktail or the social cocktail when I go out to dinner with my friends. Like keeping it cute. Like get me the drink that looks pretty and tastes sweet. Okay? I would drink for taste. I had no intentions on, getting like drunk. Yes, I've had days when I've gone out and I've had more than one drink, but it was never frequent, and it was never something that I could say was a part of my lifestyle. It was like truly occasional, right? And I would say that when I started getting closer to God, the the alcohol, the need to drink, the desire to drink pretty much faded away. And it's not just the desire itself, but the desire to be in situations where heavy drinking is promoted, that faded away. Because I would recall that when I would drink, it's like you lose a sense of control over your life, over yourself, over your mouth. Like when people start drinking and they start like just saying things that they should not say, you know. And the issue was, it's not necessarily that I was drinking a lot. The issue was that I am a lightweight. Because I don't drink very often, if I take like 2 sips of a light cocktail, I will start feeling a little light. Okay? My legs will start feeling a little weak. Okay? My alcohol tolerance is very low because I rarely ever drink. I have not had, the last time I drank was probably almost 2 years ago, if I'm being honest, or somewhere in that time frame. It's been a very long time, right? And I have not been burning for a drink because I've only been a social drinker, but then I felt convicted to not be in environments where people would drink. And then because I've always been, very health conscious, prioritizing health, eventually it got to a point where I was like, alcohol doesn't do anything good for my health. And I care about my health. So why not just not drink it? But it's the environment that was created when there was heavy drinking involved. That is where the conviction started setting in, like, you should not be there. you have no business being there, right? Even when I would be there drinking prior to it, sometimes, like, we all know at least one person in our life that takes it a little bit too far when they drink. And when you are the one who is the most responsible, quote unquote, person in the room, meaning you're probably not drinking or barely drinking, you kind of become the person that has to babysit the irresponsible one, or the people that really, feel the vibe in the moment and just, let themselves go. You end up being the responsible person by default. And I feel like because I have always been that responsible person by default, because I never really cared to go past my limit because I knew it never took much for me, it really left a bad taste in my mouth, in the sense that I for one, I do not want to be the person that is extremely reckless and extremely drunk. And number two, I also do not want to be the person who's taking care of the reckless person. That got really old for me. You see what I mean? That got really old for me, right? Because it's like our boundaries, our thresholds are different, and you can do you, but at the same time, it's like when you're doing you and you get to a point where you are doing a little bit too much, I, as your friend, I am not going to allow you to be taken advantage of, or to be, like in a position where you're really not there mentally, you under the influence. I would not just like leave you because you chose to make that decision. I will always look out for you. But it gets to a point where you get tired of having to babysit, especially when we're adults. You see what I mean? So I had just one too many times in my life where I had to babysit certain people, and I decided that, you know what, I don't want to babysit anymore, and I don't want to be in certain environments where, even though I had a drink, I still have, the mental capacity to understand right from wrong in this moment. And I just don't like how things escalate when heavy drinking is involved. So I said, you know what? I don't want to be in these situations anymore. God's really started convicting me. He took away the desire for me to drink. So eventually I stopped drinking, but I was still going in those environments because, again, I used to participate, right? Not to that extent, but I used to participate or allow myself to be in certain environments. So technically, I'm the one changing here. I am the one who decided that I am simply just not going to drink anymore. But I still put myself in the environments. And I realized that it was never about drinking. Even though I personally just choose not to drink, I realized that it was never about drinking. It was about the environment. It was about what the environment facilitated. It's about what would escalate in the environment when all of those conditions for chaos were met. Because I don't like drama. I don't like when things start escalating. It's time for me to go. It's time for me to go, right? I don't like all of the drama. When things get to a certain point, I'm ready to leave. That's one thing about me. I'm not here for it at all. Okay. I am not here for it at all. I won't leave you in the situation, but I am not going back out with you if that's what things are going to be. Right. And in terms of how that affected my relationships, for me personally, I did not judge my friends or mutual friends or the people in my life who chose to drink or were still drinking like they had been before, just because I decided not to. That's why I still went in those environments, because I'm just like, I am the one who decided to change. I made a personal choice to cut that out of my life. But I am not going to require you to adhere to my personal decisions, because that's a personal choice. I am not going to judge you for what you choose to do, right? I'm still your friend. Cool. I thought that that was good enough. But what ended up happening was, when I would go in these situations and now I would be 100% sober, the reactions were not very well. For one, there would be times where people, it's almost as if they took offense to me not wanting to drink. It's like it bothered their spirit. I'm sitting here, I'm chill. People are drinking around me and I'm just like, whatever, people, we're adults here. You have the option to drink, right? Like I'm not going to be that person, right? I'm just minding my business. But if you ask me what I want to drink, I'll say nothing or water or juice. I'm fine, right? I'm good. But it got to a point where certain people in my life acted like they literally took offense or were literally irritated at the fact that I was not drinking. And that's when things started going downhill because I I did not really know how to react to that because I was not persecuting you. I was to this day I have friends who drink and I don't tell them anything about it, right? I don't judge them for that. I don't give them no sermon on how they should drink, why they shouldn't drink. I don't talk about how alcohol is bad for your health. I don't do any of that. That's my personal conviction. I go out with my friends and they have a cute little cocktail and I have a cute little mocktail and we have a great time, right? But those are not the friends that I had issues with. The friends that I had issues with, the friendships, the relationships that did not survive are the people who took offense to me making those changes in my life. Like there were points where I felt like people almost like were trying to force a drink down my throat. Like literally, I would say, no, I don't want a drink. I don't want a shot or whatever. And they would pour me one and literally be like trying to force it into my hand, force it into my mouth. And I'm just like, I do not want to drink. And one thing about me, when I say no and you keep pushing, I start getting irritated. I need to say a prayer because I feel like you're walking on thin ice. Okay, I'm not going to shout, I'm not going to yell, but when I say no, I mean no, right? So things started going downhill because I'm not in the business of repeating myself to adults, right? I'm not here judging you. I'm not here telling you what you should do. I'm fine with being around you if you want to drink, right? It's not an issue for me. I just choose not to. I was never really big on it anyway. I just decided to cut it out. And some people were literally offended at that decision. Some people, I felt like eventually it got to a point where I had to stop going out. I had to stop going around certain friend groups. I had to really distance myself from certain like friends, certain mutual friends because it's almost the way they treated me is like they could not stand the fact that I was not drinking. I really did not know how to respond to that because I'm just like, I'm not here lecturing y'all. I'm literally minding my business. I'm partaking in everything that I feel comfortable partaking in. I simply said that I will not drink. Why do you have an issue with that? Why I don't lecture you. I don't do that to you. Why are you so bothered by the fact that I choose not to drink? I didn't know how to respond to that. So eventually I had to cut back. I had to distance myself from some of those friendships, and some of them survived, some of them did not. And some did not change because some of them were never, in a position where we needed to drink to have a friendship or anything. It was just, like I have friends like I said, we go out, we get food, we go to dinner, we go to nice places, they order drinks, like a nice cute little mocktail. We have a great time, great conversation. I don't drink, but it's like nothing changed. We're good, right? But the friendships that I had that were founded in, or not founded in, but consisted of certain outings where drinking was very prevalent, these relationships took a hit, and some recovered and some did not. It got to a point where, like, I had friends where initially when I was the one scaling back, they felt some type of way because it looks like I was moving differently, quote unquote, because I no longer wanted to be in certain situations. Like the drinking games we used to play, I was fine with the games. I was not fine with the drinking because it, like, when you take in shots and stuff like that, things can go left real quick, and I just don't like being around really drunk people. I don't like it. I don't like being around people who are very loud, who are very obnoxious, who are very, just out under the influence. I don't like it. That's not I don't like it. But because I realized that in some of the friendship groups that I had, that sometimes these type of things needed to be there when we met up, I was like, all right, I'm going to scale back. I distanced myself and I did not see people for like a year because that's pretty much what they were on. And I was on it with them before. Okay. But as I grew in my relationship with God, as He, started molding my character in the ways that I've been sharing, as he started convicting me, as he started calling me higher, as he started calling me to certain things, I was like, I simply no longer resonate with being in certain environments. And when that started happening and I distanced myself from those people, at first it was, interesting. It was interesting because they did not understand at first, but interestingly enough, later down the line, those friends now are basically like on the same page. Those friends are like now basically on the same page. I didn't influence them. God, they found the Lord on their own and they got convicted of certain things on their own. I think also it came with us growing and maturing and like, settling down in your careers, getting serious about your future, the trajectory of your future and stuff like that. People just kind of grew out of certain things, and because they phased out of that, we got closer. Like we were able to rekindle that relationship. But some of my friendships did not make it. Some of them did not make it because God brought me to a point where he made me assess the environments that were created in certain friendships. He made me assess what exactly do we talk about? What do we do? How do I feel? What does this do for me or to me? Right? And in addition to changing my character, where I'm now wanting more for myself, I am now, getting firmer in my boundaries. I am now becoming more assertive, because I used to be very passive. I used to just let things slide, let things go under the bus. But once he started really building my character, helping me heal from certain things, now I'm speaking up more. Now I'm putting my foot down more. So the relationships where people were like, taking advantage of the fact that I was so passive, they started falling apart. They started falling apart because now my tolerance was not there. Now my eyes were open. Now when I would look at certain relationships in my life, I would be like, this is not healthy. This is not healthy. And when he really started making me look at the environments that were created in certain relationships, I was like, it's almost like I felt grieved. You get to a point where the veil gets lifted off of your eyes. You get to a point where, you stop making excuses for people. And you also get to a point where you have to realize that any friend that feels offended by you wanting more for yourself, any friend that genuinely just tries to pull you down or pull you back is not a friend worth keeping. You see what I mean? Like, I did not go to any of my friends and was like, you're dragging me down and I can't take you with me and da-da-da-da. I didn't do that. I simply observed, and I was like, talking to God about it and also asking him to reveal my flaws, right? Convict me of where I'm in error, right? Help me be patient, because at the same time, I don't necessarily believe that when you start changing, everything is like an immediate cut off, because I think some people deserve grace. Not everybody, but some people deserve grace, because like I said earlier, one in some of my friendships, initially when I started, pulling back from certain environments, they did not get it at first, and we had to have some distance in between us. But eventually they were on their own journeys in life where God was calling them to higher. They started growing in their faith apart from me. I didn't influence it, right? They started growing in their faith. And then some of them, it's not even because they started growing in their faith, but they grew out of certain things. And it was the same things that was, that made me put some distance between us. But eventually, fortunately, we came back together because we are all committed to growth and personal growth. Our timelines may be different, but because we are all, like holding each other accountable, growing in our faith, because we have our own personal relationships with God, eventually we made it back to each other, right? But I didn't. And God had to convict me too, to not just step away and be passive and let things die or feel like I had to cut people off. But, he had to convict me to like communicate how I was feeling and not just like pull away, even because I was confused as well. I didn't have the words for it when I initially started going through that. I didn't understand why I was in the rooms that I would always be in, and all of a sudden it feels different now. But unfortunately, some of my friendships, some of my relationships, people were not there. Or maybe they're on a different timeline, which is okay. But one of the things that God has really helped me with in this season is my boundaries and being more assertive and communication. So, whereas years ago in the past, I would have just, not handled the situation in the best way possible, probably pull away and like maybe ghost people. He really convicted me and brought me to a point where I'm communicating, I'm having these boundaries for myself and I'm sticking to it, not just to like set thresholds or set expectations for myself or for other people, but truly through doing the deep work of helping me heal from certain things, like I've been explaining in this series and on this podcast, helping me heal, helping me root my identity in Him, revealing certain things about myself, helping me unpack all of the things that has caused me to be so guarded. Like through the process of healing and the personal growth journey with God, it's because of all of these things that I feel more confident and assertive communicating my boundaries, because it's like when God starts showing you who you are, when He starts calling you higher, when you start seeing yourself how He sees you, you feel like you are worth protecting. Versus in the past, when I was still carrying all of that trauma, hurt, and resentment, that like somewhere deep rooted in me was a lot of pain and rejection that made me afraid to step up for myself, maybe afraid to assert my boundaries, maybe made me afraid to speak up for myself in that way, right? But because he went for it at the roots and He really like worked on my identity, now it's not like there's not a big fear in communicating my boundaries. There's not a big fear in like telling people that, my standards have changed. There's not a big fear in saying, I am not going to tolerate this, because now it's from an understanding of who I am in God, right? It's from an understanding that if God can pursue me, chase me down, do all of these things to mold me, I must be important. I must be special. I must be worth protecting, right? So when you are violating my boundaries, I have no problem speaking up, because now I understand that I am worth protecting. I am worth respecting. You don't have to agree, but you can disagree out of my face. You can disagree over there, because I'm not tolerating that nonsense, right? So, but I digress. When God really got me to that point, it was a lot easier to communicate, because I'm just like, okay, listen, to be very frank, I'm not here to convict you. I'm not here to give you a sermon. I'm not here to persuade you. However, my standards for myself has changed. My boundaries have changed. And you don't have to agree. You don't have to change your life. But if you want to be in my life in any capacity, you have to respect that, because certain things I'm not going to waver on. If I say that I don't want to be in certain environments because I feel like it's detrimental to me in some way, shape, or form, or I just don't want to be around certain things, then I'm not going to be in the environment. If that is the only environment that we can facilitate in this friendship, then we don't need to have this friendship, right? If I say that I don't want to drink and you feel offended by that, take it up with whoever you need to take it up with. But I am not drinking, right? I'm not going to sit here and patronize you for drinking. We're adults. You can do whatever you want. But the same way I'm respecting your decision to drink, you are going to respect my decision to not drink. And if you cannot respect it, then don't invite me anywhere, right? It's very simple. It's very simple. It's not rocket science. You would swear I went somewhere with somebody while they were drinking and gave them a whole pep talk or lecture on why they should quit drinking. I never brought it up. I never even brought it up. I would just go hang out with people, and then if we were out and somebody was taking our order and they asked, what do you want to drink? I would just simply say, I'm not drinking, or ask for water. And then people would be offended. And I'm just like, that offense, take it up with somebody else, because I said what I said. Why is that an issue? I'm not judging you for drinking. Why are you harassing me? Why are you ready to jump down my throat? You see what I mean? But at the same time, that's when I realized that, okay, Sensi, it's not about arguing with people. It's not about going through all of that hoopla with people on how they react to how I feel. I am just simply going to say, listen, I'm not drinking. I don't want to be in certain environments. These are my new boundaries. These are my new standards. I'm allowed to have them. And I am not going to do it. And if you know that that's going to be an issue for you, you have the right to feel that way. If you know that's going to be an issue for you, don't invite me to do anything, right? And if you cannot invite me to do anything because that's an issue for you and that's all it will ever be, then I guess we would not see each other. I am fine with that because I know what I'm protecting. I'm not here to debate that with you, right? Because some people were truly offended and I did not understand. I did not understand. Why would you be offended? Some of my relationships made it. Some I had to put distance, but we made it back together again. And some did not make it. And I'm okay with that, right? There's no harm, there's no ill will, there's no drama or anything like that. It's just a simple matter of people are allowed to change their boundaries. People are allowed to change. People are allowed to want more. People are allowed to raise their standards. People are allowed to grow out of certain things. And if it's not anything that is detrimental to you, if you simply just have an issue because you don't like it or it offends you, but it's genuinely for their betterment, for their growth, and that genuinely bothers you, perhaps y'all need to part ways, right? Perhaps y'all need to part ways. But that's how, my relationships have been taking a hit. The alcohol and the drinking is just an example because that's one of the things that, unfortunately was so controversial when I decided to not do it, not with everybody, but with some people. But overall, there are other things too. There are other examples, other areas that affected my friendships. But ultimately, what it came down to is that in that wilderness season with God and in a previous wilderness season that I had with him before this one, he was basically like molding me, shaping my character, helping me heal from things that caused me to be a people pleaser, helping me heal from things that made me very passive, helping me heal for things that made me have a high tolerance for things I should have had a low tolerance for. And through all of these things, through all of like these lessons, through unpacking all of that, through digging up all of that, through helping me ground myself in him, have him as my foundation, have him as my rock, helping me find my sense of identity and worth in him and who he says I am and not the trauma that I have endured, things have changed. Things have changed, right? There's a different level of confidence that you get when you do life with God versus when you do it on your own terms and you're just operating in self-defense and ego and selfishness and all of these things. When you root it in God, oh, child, when you do life with God, especially as a woman, you get very spoiled. You get very spoiled because somebody died for me. Why are you stressing me out? You see what I mean? Like, he has just changed me so much and my taste has changed. My taste has changed. My standards have elevated. My boundaries have elevated and are being enforced. And the people-pleasing tendencies and the fear of rejection and the passive aggressiveness that would make me be so fearful of losing relationships or make me almost conform or keep my mouth shut to keep the peace, she has left the building. I don't fear confrontation now, right? I have a very low tolerance for certain things. In the past, whereas I would have let a lot of things slide, I'm going to address it now. I'm going to address it now. In the past, where certain things would have been, I would have just like brushed it under the rug. Now I'm just like, sweetheart, we can never speak again and I will be okay with that. Okay? Don't try somebody else. Try somebody else. Because if I'm not doing anything that genuinely makes your life hell, that genuinely violates your boundaries, if I'm not doing something that's actually offensive, if I'm, I don't think I'm perfect. I don't think I'm perfect. But if I'm simply just improving my life and becoming more confident while I grow in my relationship with God, and that leaves a sour taste in some people's mouth, then you can choke respectfully. Respectfully, that's a personal problem because I am not going back on it because you feel uncomfortable. You see what I mean? But at the same time, I do acknowledge that regardless of the situation, communication is always required. It's always, like don't necessarily ghost per se. Don't be that person, Sensi. Don't be that person you used to be. Communicate, but at the same time, sometimes you just have to leave people alone. Sometimes you have to let people, work things out on their own timeline. But at the same time, I always try to hold myself accountable, as always. I mean, I don't have a whole podcast on accountability just to, absolve myself from accountability in my own life. So I always, pray and talk to God about people. I always ask God to, create in me a pure heart and also reveal the areas of my life that I need to work on. Reveal to me the things that I need to address. Convict me when I am wrong. Convict me when I am wrong. Because I don't want to be sitting on some high horse or whatever, thinking that somebody is wrong and I'm wrong too, and I can't see that I'm wrong, or I'm not addressing where I'm wrong. You see what I mean? So I definitely pray and I ask God to convict me too. And a lot of the convictions that I have received has been, on my communication and on working on not being so closed off and gradually opening up to people more. That's why in, a lot of recent episodes, I have talked about the process of healing, all of the things that made me so guarded and, beyond self-defense. When I ask God to convict me of the ways that I have been in error, convict me of the things that are preventing my relationships from flourishing, and it's my fault. He started unpacking, he started, helping me heal from all of these things, because it's not always as simple as saying, well, your issue is communication. God gets the root of why the communication is hard. So in me praying and asking him to convict me and then help me where I fall short, he has been really digging deep, bringing up a lot of old stuff. Okay. Things that I would prefer if he didn't bring up, but I'm submitted. I'm surrendered now. Okay, I gave up control. I'm here for him. Okay, he's not here for me. I'm here for him. I do what he wants me to do, right? And a lot of that has been just digging up all of the self-defense mechanisms, all of these issues that I've had to work through, and taking accountability, forgiving people. I remember one time I asked God about certain relationships in my life where I felt like, there was an issue and I was upset at someone, and before I sat there and made them the problem, I prayed to God and I said, God, am I in error? I know I have brought my grievances against them to you, but am I in error? Convict me of my wrongdoing here, because it takes two hands to clap. It cannot be just them. Show me where I'm in error. And God revealed to me, he sent me to 1 Corinthians, I think it's chapter 13, verse 4. It's the scripture on love. Love is patient, love is kind, right? It does not boast, it does not envy. It keeps no record of wrongdoing. It rejoices in the truth, all of that. And I was reading it, and when I got to the part where it says, love keeps no record of wrongs, I had to close the Bible and I said, ooh, that's it. That's it. That's where I was in error. I was holding a record of wrongs against that person. And so when they did that tiny little thing, my emotions were heightened at that tiny little thing, because I was already carrying a long receipts list of times where they offended me that they don't even know of because I didn't communicate it. I was holding that long paper of receipts. And when they did that tiny little thing, it offended me. And I'm bringing my grievances to God. And God said, you are not showing this person love because you are holding this long record of wrongs against them. And you're being mad at them for not showing love to you, but you're also not showing love to them, but in a different way. And just because it's different doesn't make it right or doesn't make it justified. I immediately forgave. I said, you know what? You're right. I said, you know what, you're right. And then I took a look at the situation from a different perspective, and I said, okay, having forgiven them of all of these things, I went through the list that I was holding against them, and I made peace with it. I forgave them because it wasn't like serious offenses. It's like maybe they did something that offended me because of my perspective, but they did not mean it that way, or they don't even know that I was offended because it's not something that was overtly offended. It was just something I took offense to because they didn't meet my expectations. It was like petty things, okay? And so when I said, you know what, all right, fine, I feel convicted. I heard you loud and clear. I put all of that to rest. I forgave them. And then I looked at the situation through a new lens and I said, okay, having forgiven them of everything, if I just look at this one little thing that they did in isolation, does it warrant the reaction that I gave it? And the answer was no. And I moved on with my life. I moved on with my life. He convicted me. He was like, you were wrong. And I was like, you know what? You're right. I am wrong. And I closed my mouth and I went on about my day because I was, feeling upset at something and I was in error in that situation. And before I even brought it to them, before I even brought it against them, I first prayed about it and I said, God, tell me if I am wrong first. Reveal to me, convict me of my wrongdoing because this is how I feel, but tell me if I am wrong. And he told me I was wrong. And I said, okay, right? So it's not the way my relationships have changed in this wilderness is not just through, putting myself on some pedestal or sitting on some high horse and looking at who's serving me and who's not serving me and this relationship isn't helping me and this isn't doing anything for me or whatever. It's not sitting on some high horse and saying this isn't serving me anymore. It's also looking inward and saying, how am I negatively affecting my relationships? Where can I work on myself, right? And so one thing I always do now is, when I have grievances with people, before I address them, I go to God and I ask him, show me my wrongdoing, convict me. Because if by the time I have that conversation with you, I don't want to go in feeling like you are the one who did me wrong. If there is also something on my part that I need to be addressing as well, right? It's I have let go of the need to be right. I have let go of the need to have the last word and all of these things. It's like if somebody is in my life, it's because I care about you. Because I don't just keep people in my life who just, I don't, that's not me. I'm a quality of a quantity person, right? So in regards to the relationships in my life, if you're in my life, I ideally want to keep you in my life, right? And as we get older, as we grow older, the nature of our relationships will change. I am noticing that my needs in relationships and friendships are changing as I get older, as I grow in my relationship with God, right? There's a need for depth now. There's a need to actually have certain experiences or go beneath the surface with people and all of these different things. And I feel like in going through this wilderness season with God, he has really allowed me to become a better person for the people in my life as well. It's not something that just happens overnight. It certainly has not happened overnight. I don't think I am perfect. I do think there's still, some ways to go. But I definitely think that I'm a lot better in how I handle things than before. Still have some work to do, but it's a lot better than where I was before because, it's been taking some time. And another thing too, because God has showed me that the process of me getting to a point where I can have enough humility to where I'm mad at a person or irritated with a person and I can still pray to him and say, convict me and show me where I am wrong when I'm mad at a person. It made me realize that two things. Number one, you should have patience with other people and because love is patient. And number two, when you're genuinely invested in having your relationships grow, these things are not going to happen over time. And the way your relationship improves is when both people are committed to their own personal growth. Both people are, more or less equally yoked, especially in their faith, if that's something that's important to you or to one person. And also it's a process, right? With the friends that I had to put distance in between us and then we later rekindle our friendship, it's because they had to go through their own process in their own life where God had to shape them and mold them, and they had to heal from certain things. They had to let go of certain toxic relationships. They had to make certain decisions in their life. And then we came back and we were aligned again. But with the people that, things, you know, takes a different turn. For one, it's understanding that yes, sometimes you definitely have to let these relationships go, or at least put distance in between you. But on another note, some of them, not all, okay, if you're in danger or anything, don't have patience, okay, free yourself. But some of them actually require grace and empathy and patience, because when I saw the things God had to unpack within me to get to a point where I could have enough humility to make sure I'm acknowledging my errors before I even go to people about how they have grieved me in some way, shape, or form. And that's not something I would have done before. There's not something I would have done before. I have truly seen that sometimes you have to be patient with people, because I could communicate certain needs or certain things, and that will not make sense to people until they go through their own healing journey or their own personal growth journey and get past a certain point to where they can resonate or receive what I am saying. Because if somebody in my life, if I had the same situation where I was keeping a list of wrongs against somebody a few years ago, and they said something that ticked me off, I would not be praying back then. I would not be praying back then. I would probably be very petty. I'd probably be very passive aggressive. I would probably be manipulative, try to make you feel bad about how you have bothered me in this situation. I probably would not be open to acknowledging any wrongdoing on my part, especially if it's in the same conversation or instance where I bring up something against you and you're trying to bring up something against me. Do you want to argue? You see what I'm saying? Like, not even acknowledging where I'm coming from, but you throwing stuff in my... You see, like, me a couple of years ago would not have been this mature. So that's why I'm like, if I see how much it took for me to get to this place, I have to understand that for some people, I also need to have patience, because I can share certain things with them, but until they go through their own personal growth journey, healing journey, faith journey, they are not going to be able to really receive what I am saying. And I can put the distance between us, but at the same time, it's like, I'm not going to sit on a high horse and act like, well, I have changed and I have grown and you need to keep up with the pace and da 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 da. I just have a different perspective, because again, love is patient. I've seen how he has loved me, and it has made me more empathetic towards other people. But at the same time, don't try me, like at the same time, let's not take advantage of my patience, because I'm a Christian, not Christ. Okay. He's still working on me. He's still working on me. Certain things I can definitely understand. I can, be receptive to. I can have patience to. Other things, I will definitely block you. God bless. But that's essentially, the ways my relationships have been impacted in this wilderness season that I just went through, with all the things that God has, been unpacking and helping me heal from. I think I'm a more patient person. I'm more receptive. I don't think I'm perfect. I still think there's some ways to go. But we're doing a lot better, and that's all that matters. Okay. I think I'm definitely, at the very least, more receptive, more open to, like when people, like want to come to me with something. But I would say one big change that I have seen is, even though I have reached a certain level of humility and patience and empathy and all of that, I have also reached a new low when it comes to tolerance. Like, my tolerance has also been significantly reduced at the same time, but it depends on the situation. It depends on what we're talking about, right? Because yes, I understand you have to have patience, but at the same time, if I am trying to work with somebody and you don't seem to be on the same page, I am fine just, going our separate ways. But that's in a sense how my relationships have been affected. I'm truly grateful for it. And I've also gotten very close to people. I've also been able to open up, let people in. I've, gradually been doing that. I feel like I've been better about opening up and showing up in my imperfections, not trying to be something I'm not, just being authentic. It has truly helped me in that regard. But some didn't make it, some did. Grateful for the ones that did. And yeah, that is how my relationships were affected. That is all I have to say this week, and I will talk to you next Sunday.